So welcome to Bridge Generations Changes the World. Thanks for coming on a Saturday morning. I know it's not easy to give up a generally chill time to do something like this, and I really appreciate you coming aboard. Um, I was talking to Ken earlier about why I'm interested in this topic myself. Um, generational stuff has always been going on, probably since the beginning of time. Um, People don't like their parents or whatever. Um, I don't know what it was like in the 12th or 13th century or whatever, but I think it's probably always been it's always been a difference between generations and how we see one another. But I think the thing for me, which makes it a little bit more urgent for us to think about this right now, is that the scale of the issues and the problems that we're dealing with as a species, um, in my mind, they're greater than there ever have been before. So I've created, which hopefully is a fun and useful hour and a half for us to explore these kind of things and maybe think how we can do this better, communicating better. Two people entered the room, Clark and somebody else. Oops.
Lori.
Here's Lori. So I think everybody's here. Hello, Lori. So I
Good
think everybody's
morning.
here. Hi, Lori.
Hi. I apologize deeply.
You don't have to go so deep into your apology. So I asked our four panelists, and I'll join them. And if we have time, we can all do this. But I ask you maybe simply to think about a song or a poem or something which really just identifies your generation.
Geez.
Just anything. Just and introduce yourself that way, and we'll get into the rest of the day.
Hmm.
Can we play the song if we can access it? I
Oh
wasn't
my
prepared
God!
for this angle.
Oh, you weren't prepared for that. You didn't read your
The
email.
song. I did remember. I didn't see the song part.
What did it
I,
say? The
it
first,
said, to come early, and it gave you a few prompts about generational stuff, but I didn't see the song. Doesn't matter. I can
doesn't have
find
to
it.
be a song. It could be like anything
Oh,
from an era that you identify with.
okay.
I'm happy to start.
Thank you, Lori, because no one else seems to be already.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy to have had this posed to me because it made me think about something that impacted me and possibly also my generation and its effects. And it was the John Lennon Yoko Ono song, "Give Peace a Chance."
Mhm.
And first of all, I'm Canadian, and that song was composed, and the whole scene of that song happened in Canada. So it seems a little bit more rooted within, where I began my life. So um, I think this song is very meaningful to me, which tells me, in a way, is a bit of an introduction to me as Lori. And it really impacted the fact that we could actually ask for peace
Mhm.
and have people join together to actually try and make that happen or to make that happen. And so for me, it was about speaking. It was about asking for what was required at the time. It was also about not accepting what was going on by the establishment. The song itself, just basically, I don't know who wouldn't recognize that song almost of any generation, because that song is still used, 55 years later. I think it was composed in 1970. So it has, truly a life of its own. And it was written to stand up against something that was really important to people, and that was the Vietnam War. And I think the last thing that, I want to say is, the impact of the peace in my own life. And I would say that has been a running theme for me throughout my life. So very impactful. I know impactful to other generations and to the generation, the baby boomer generation. So I appreciate that question.
Okay, let's hear from one of our millennials, maybe Mr. Ian Lewis, or maybe Miss Tamar, who seemed to have disappeared for a moment.
Internet, but we back. For me, the first thing that comes up is the song called "All Right" by Kendrick Lamar. That just may be in my bubble, but
You might have to
it's
hum
just
it for me because I don't know this tune. I would like to know it. Say something about it.
we gonna be all right. I think what I mean, I feel like how's the first verse start? I can rap it. I know I can start the second one. What you want? You a
Joe
house, you a
Jeff is ready to
car,
rap it with
piano?
you. So
How's that start? Like yeah, but I remember like during like all the protests during a lot of like the George Floyd protests, it was like kind of the song, and yeah, it's just I don't know, a good song. It's kind of how I think a lot of the generation feels of like there's a lot of things on our shoulders. Definitely not the easiest time to like survive and thrive, but we gonna be all right. Um, and yeah, that's really what comes to mind with me. Um, I don't know. I guess
and you got one.
Tamar's not back yet, but she said she had something up her sleeve. What? All right, come here. Just do it. Just come over here then.
We're alternating anyway. So I was going to Ken,
Okay.
and then Tamar can go.
Okay. Okay.
All right. You're going to me?
Yep.
I'm going to try to play this thing in the background.
I think I have.
The
Do I have
thing,
to do I have to do anything to let you play it?
I don't know. This music, can you hear music playing? Or just
Yeah, well,
probably
we can
not.
hear you talking, so
You can't hear it. Okay.
no, we can hear.
Um,
I can make you co-host and turn the sound on. I mean, these technical things.
all right. Can you do that?
Yeah, give me a second though.
Well, tell us about it while we do that.
Look like gas down there.
All right. This is a song that
Smells like gas
Oh, no.
downstairs.
Dear.
we got a interruption.
Okay, you're co-host now.
All right. This is a song that's not necessarily generational, but it's personal. It's personal to me, and it relates to the timing. And so it is of my. It was, I was in seventh grade when my friend we were having sleepovers, and he played this song and this album for me. So see if you can hear it now. I don't know if it's going to work.
It might not because you have your headphones on.
All right. All right. Give me one more second. I'll take the headphones off, but turn them off. All right. One last try, and then I'll talk. All right. So when the rock opera Tommy came out, I was in seventh grade, and my friend and I would stay up all night at a sleepover playing it, and it was these themes about this deaf, dumb, and blind child, and I didn't think about it at the time, but metaphorically, it was like all the feelings of being lost and trying to find direction. Can you hear the music now at all? No. Oh well. It's the part that goes listening to you. I hear the music, gazing at you. All right. The music part won't work. Anyway, it was the rock album, rock opera Tommy. It was the first rock opera, and it was kind of like a lost child searching for identity, parenthood, sensory ability, because he was deaf, dumb, and blind. And it was a watershed moment, and it came when I was in seventh grade, and it was kind of a turning point. So it spoke to me for my late baby boomer generation, even though it wasn't a political song or a cultural song in the direct sense. So anyway,
I think we all know that song, correct?
all right.
I
Yeah.
don't know it actually, but that's okay.
Younger people know it, but it starts with going see me, feel me, touch me, heal me, that part,
Yeah.
and then it goes into the listening to you chorus. So I'll put a link to it anyway in the chat because it's
Yeah.
actually very good musically, but it just for me personally, it was a watershed moment, and not just the song, but the album.
Tamara, are you here? There she is.
Hey everyone. I missed some of the songs. I'm sad. But Ian will give me a recap. I chose a song. I'll give you a quiz. Maybe you know the lyrics. With the lights out, it's less dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now, entertain us. Mulatto, an albino, a mosquito, my libido. Yeah. Anyone know the song? This was
Smells
like
Teen Spirit.
the Nirvana, very 90s. And I didn't grow up in the States, but this song went global and impacted my childhood too. And I didn't know what they were saying. No idea. But it looked really interesting and important. And also rebellious. And the video was in like a high school, and there's like cheerleaders, and it looked very tongue-in-cheek and wild. And it definitely became an anthem to millennials. I think everywhere in the world almost, or many places.
Yeah, well, mine, just for the record, is it's by the Buffalo Springfield. No, it wasn't Buffalo. Anyway, it goes like "For Dead in Ohio."
That's
For
Neil
Dead.
Young.
Neil Young.
I was going to do that one too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Even today, if I hear that, something vibrates in me, how many more?
Yeah, that's a good one.
So anyway, I want to give you a little bit of an extra thank you for everybody for doing that. If we had more time, I'm sure everybody else would contribute wonderful songs too, some of which I probably wouldn't know because I'm too old. But in any event, I'm going to give you a little sort of solo exercise. It'd probably be helpful if you would have something to write on. So it'd be a two-part thing that two different prompts I'm going to give you, and we'll refer to them when we come back. So the first thing is I want you to pick one thing that happened in your childhood or early adulthood, which was very impactful for you. Doesn't have to be about anything having to do with external things. That's your first task. And the second one is to think about some stereotypes that are put on your generation. And I'll give you like I don't know, maybe 5 minutes to do those things.
Could you just repeat them?
Yeah.
Say it
Yeah,
another
just
time.
one incident in your childhood or early adulthood or your early adolescence, I'll say, that really impacted you very deeply. That's the first one. And the second one is think about stereotypes that you've heard about your generation that just generations. Confirm my speaking language. Leave me alone.
Stereotypes.
Yeah, so it might be things like I don't know, don't trust anyone over 30, or boomers are illiterate. They don't know how to anything about tech. Just any stereotypes that affect your generation in particular. Okay, so I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and this is just about the first task, which was the event of your childhood or early adolescence. And everybody's going to have pretty much the same task, which is to talk about what is the generational fingerprint of that story. In other words, what was going on at the time, um, and the other is that how might someone 20 years older or younger than you interpret that same event?
That's a good idea.
And I'm going to put that in the chat so you'll see it, but I'll say it again. So, what was the generational fingerprint of the story that you shared? And the second is, how might someone 20 years older or younger interpret the same event? So, is that clear to everybody before I start? I'm going to make an attempt to put you in different generation breakout groups. So, you're going to have to give me a minute to figure all that out. So, we were in an all boomer group, and I'm curious as to what other groups heard, especially from other generations that might have made an impression on you.
Ooh, Clark, if you have, I'm gonna, what's the word? Clark, if you're okay with sharing, I really, liked your share. If you can, if you can, get your mic on right now. If not, then we can move on. I really liked Clark's share. You with us still? Maybe not. If he comes back, that's fine. Would Joe, Jeff, and Tamar want to share? I'm not sure. Like, I don't think mine was necessarily super interesting.
Or you can come up.
So I'm open to share. And I was with the fine Miss Lorraine and learned about kind of what the stigmas were. And then we talked about it was a revolutionary time, just what was going on in the world, but like the stigmas around like mental health and like seeking help for that. How the conversations would be a lot different, 20 years younger or even more.
What's going on in the background with the sound?
Yeah, especially if Ken's not there. If Ken's there, then.
Who's that?
Another voice happening.
Yeah, if you could put your mic on mute, I think it might be Ken's.
No, I don't think it's. Well, I guess we can all. I don't know.
Gone.
So anyway, Joe, Jeff, recreate it for us a little bit, so those of us that weren't there know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so Miss Lorraine was sharing about where like in her family how mental health affected them and how she had to step into a role and how that was not something that like you would share openly. Like the stigmas and conversations around it is kind of. Am I muted?
No, we can hear
No,
you.
okay.
I got a
Yeah,
run.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
yeah, just how to it's not something that a community would embrace around, as opposed to maybe even 20 years later or even where we are now, where it's like open conversation and
Can,
ability. Go
can
ahead.
I jump in from my perspective? When I was 13, my mother went to a mental hospital. I was 13, it was 1963. Okay. And my mother was in a loony bin. And so there was real, come on, at
I'm looking at the word
1963.
loony bin was the one that made me laugh. That's all. Go ahead.
Well, there you go. They wouldn't, it was a loony bin in 63. Okay.
Mhm,
Those were the terms that were used.
mhm.
And I was 13 at a time when you're just beginning adolescence and the stigma in 1963. Hello. So we talked about 20 years later in 83, and now everybody goes to a therapist. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. So that was a very so I'm sorry, Joe, but I just wanted to say it in terms of my experience.
Maybe I was trying to be a little too eloquent, but you got right to it. So
I got to it, it hit me in the heart. So
yeah,
that's how
fair.
I did it. So
So, in terms of any stories in that group, who else were you with in your group? Lori, Joe, Jeff, was somebody else there?
It was just the two of us.
Two of you. Well, I guess I'll ask you, anything that Joe Jeff said really surprised you, Lorraine?
He had an experience after college where everything kind of he was wondering where he was going, whether he was going to do the uh, everything kind of hit him in terms of where am I going? And things were happening. I guess it was, I don't know what help me out, Joe. Was
Mhm.
it George
Yeah.
Floyd?
Um, Actually, around that time that was probably
You-
what's his name in Florida? Um,
the kid who got killed.
Zimmerman. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was around
Trayvon Martin.
Zimmerman. Yeah.
so things were happening that made
Thank you.
him
Thank you, Bill.
reflect on what
Mm,
am I doing? It was 2013. It was
mhm,
2013. And I just thought it was interesting. He says, well, I guess while he was in college, this stuff started happening to him. And then all of a sudden it hit him when he graduated from college.
mm.
So those, and then I guess there were I forget what did you say, Joe, about the stuff that was happening at that time?
So I picked that time period because not only the events that were happening, but like what was happening personally from like a spiritual and social standpoint. I had went on a missions trip right after college, and that kind of changed my purview on like the religion I had been learning my whole life. So it was just like one of those times where it's like, you know, kind of the waters are rocky, but for a reason, you know.
Yeah, I'm thinking like Ken and I were talking about this before we got online. It's all these different things happen that are external events, but they affect us. So in some ways, unconsciously, we don't necessarily think about them, but they do. So in any event, so we had some other groups. So Bill Kelly was in a group. Who were you who were you with, Bill?
I was with Tamar and Ken, and we talked about our own situations and our own lives. And we didn't follow the prompt at all. I'll just offer one thing that might be a slant on all of this. I come from the generation that's between the traditionalists and the baby boomer. I'm born right at the end of the war in 1945. And my mother was traditionalist, but then I got into all with the baby boomers. So the traditionalist generation was the silent generation. And then the baby boomers, that was the protest generation. So I was like caught right in between two of them. So I went from being silent and totally inward, went to Berkeley, counterculture, UC, you know, protest. Okay. And then I just flipped over to the opposite. So I thought that was interesting being on the borderline of those two.
Yeah, it was interesting. We did a live group around generations just last night, and I noticed it's like the people that are a little older, they have different seminal events, for example, that they think about. Even in my life, I remember there were things like what was it when we were stockpiling things and going into basements because we were afraid of the atom bomb? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Somewhat, yeah. We would in school, in elementary school, we would go under our desks or hide in the hallway because of the atom bomb. That was a long time ago, in the 50s.
Yeah, so I think I'm probably the same age as you, Lauren. I remember that.
Yeah.
We had I didn't remember what the rooms were called, but we're encouraged to put like stockpile food like in the basement or something like that in case
Bomb shelters, they were
bomb
called.
shelters. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else from that group want to share anything? I guess that'll be a no. So in my group with Lori and who's the woman that left us?
Lisa.
Lisa. We talked about both of them had, and I'm hesitant to speak for them, so I guess I'll turn it over to Lori. We talked about issues that affect female, and I talked about something else, but maybe Laura, you can chime in here.
Well, Lisa and I had a similar story with a similar theme in that we were taught to never trust strangers. And has that really changed in the generations? And then in some ways it might be impacting more so because of internet and what's been happening, with things that aren't like, perpetrators and things like that. So that has that really changed over time, and in some ways I think it's become more of an issue of being cautious, who are you speaking to, because of all the things that can happen. So yeah, that was it was a theme.
Yeah, I mean, Lisa's story, it's like she was in a car and a guy wanted to give her candy or something, and she felt something was wrong and asked to get out of the car. And when we're talking about a generational lens, now everybody knows that, maybe people knew then that, this is wrong kind of thing. But there's maybe more hypervigilance, I think is the word that you use, Lori, about these kind of things.
And the other part of what was brought up too is that in our generation, you didn't tell anybody if something ever happened to you. Now it's encouraged and supported, and there's been big events that have happened in the world, so that people are able to speak out more about these kinds of incidents and the impact on people's lives. So our generation do not speak about it to anybody.
Very true.
Yeah, and I talked about something totally different, which is inviting a young lady to come over to my house over the holidays for Christmas. And this is not well received. They called their parents and, do they know that you're here and this, that, and the other thing. And it was complicated by the fact that she was a white girl, so. And now I know people that this is not such a big deal. In other words, like sometimes somebody in college age will come home and they'll sleep in the same room, not the same room, but sleep together basically. And not everybody does this, but this is more accepted. It wouldn't have been accepted back then in my day anyway.
Times of sexual liberation in the flower children.
Yeah, well, yes, right.
That's when it was changing. That's when the sexual mores were changing. So that was very hard for us because we were caught right in the middle,
Yeah.
especially as women and girls. What is it? Women's lib. I mean, when you look at what we were supposed to do, or we were caught in the middle, get married, have children, stay with your partner for the whole time. And now, living with somebody, it's like, what? That was so sexual mores have really changed since then. And we were right in the middle of it. We were, like, what do we do? How do we, uh, and birth control, that really changed. That was the pill. The pill was like a seminal event.
Yeah, especially for women, I think.
Yeah.
So let's transition a little bit and talk about stereotypes that you have heard or about your generation. And it seems that the only people that I can see is, well, Joe Jeff is here. They're saying thank you. I was afraid it's going to be like a boomer only conversation. Thank you. So I'm older. I guess I'll speak for I don't want to do all the speaking, but you know, some of the stereotypes that I hear about my generation. And I guess one thing to ask ourselves when we're talking about these, is there a germ of truth about these things that you hear? One of the things is that you guys don't get technology at all. You're really, you're sort of stupid. You just don't know how to do these things. and it's definitely a germ of truth. I'm lucky. I'm sort of an early adapter, but I constantly have to help my wife with technical issues or something like that. So I can understand a little bit where that stereotype comes.
Stereotype. That's truth. That's as true as hell. That's a fact.
Well,
That's
it's a
a
stereotype. It's
freaking
not true for
fact.
everybody.
Well, I have to chime in here because I have a generational story about that. And my mom, who was unbelievably progressive and likely at the age of 75, bought a computer, wrote a cookbook, and had it published by the time she was 80.
Good God.
She learned how to work on the computer. She taught herself. She was the first one in our family who had a personal computer, except for my brother, who had one because of work. And yeah, she was able to fly around that computer in every way almost that she wanted to. And so I think she's yeah, and she's a generation above us.
Yeah, that's
So
amazing.
yeah, it was.
Okay, millennials, what are some stereotypes from your side that about people say about you?
I can take this one over.
You don't have to, I know you can come up with something.
Yeah, well, yeah, one is just addicted to technology, always on their phones, always on social media. I feel like that's true. I feel like that's, true for a lot
German
of,
truth in that bad boy.
yeah, it's definitely true in that one. Definitely, what's another one? Like, financially not the most responsible, just not really focused on like their careers, living with their parents, just kind of wading through life. Um, I feel like that's there's also truth to that, but I feel like also like the situation that millennials are in always also plays to that, where a lot of people feel like the future might not be too bright, so
Might not
let me
have, might
just
have it
fucking
all.
live for the moment. Like what I'm like, I've talked to people, it's like the fuck am I saving for doomsday? I might as well, just spend it all now, go on vacations, and not too many millennials are thinking about the future. Um, this kind of intertwines is like it's overeducated, like a lot of degrees, but not actually like making money or like not strong jobs. Which I feel like also has to do with, the fact that they just printed a bunch of money and there's not many too well-paying jobs, or the cost of living has gone up, but the rate of um, income from jobs has pretty much stayed the same. Um, oh yeah, a good one is side hustles. Like you gotta have, you gotta be driving Uber, selling dope on the side, maybe, you know what I mean? Like you can't have one income stream these days. You gotta I said that for Joe. Uh yeah, like multitaskers, hustlers, it's hard to just have one stream of income out there. You gotta kind of figure it out. Yeah, interesting enough, it's all the ones I can think of are based off like the financial situation where, back in probably the boomers generation, if you're in a traditional family, the male could have one job at the power plant and make enough money to buy a house and a side house and a car and pay and now good luck with that, bro. You need multiple incomes and
So I
hustles
could
and
add a couple
yeah.
too.
What you got?
Uh, cause so I said that we have a stereotype where like we have no regard for like history or like the future, whether it's like events in history or whether it's like our elders. I feel like we have a reputation for, kind of being in self-involved in what's going on. And then I said a stereotype is that the music that we like is bad. It's not real music. It's like noise. pretty much. So I want to throw that in there because we started off on music today.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, but we had that
They
too.
said that, right? Yeah, we had that too. I was going to say that, Angelo.
Different.
They said that about our music too.
They did. Any other
Yeah.
boomer stereotypes I haven't come up with?
Well, just on that point, if I may. So to put Joe's point, when the rock and roll thing came out, and it was emblematic of when Dylan switched from folk to rock, but just the whole, that whole music was totally rejected. I remember even in when I was a young adult going to a yoga class, and the yoga teacher said that the Rolling Stones were the devil's music. And you'd think of a yoga teacher as being more enlightened. And I never went back to the class. But yeah, there was a lot. So just to give you context, Joe, the music that is now like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, even Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley, you think of that now, and you think of that as old-fashioned, simple music, but when it came out, it was revolutionary and it was rejected.
Yeah.
Even the Beatles took a long time to get accepted in mainstream, but in general, yeah, we went through that. Anyway, go ahead, Angelo, or whomever.
No, I was just asking any other boomer stereotypes.
Bell bottoms.
That's not a stereotype. That's a fashion that we wore.
Well, I'll try this, and maybe this is just me, but I get a sense that that folks feel like the boomers are kind of responsible for Trump, and that may be, and then again, there may be validity to that stereotype, but that maybe it's overlooked that we're also the hippie generation, and that we were the ones that were supposed to bring in the change. It failed, and that's very frustrating. But there's definitely there's got to be somewhere out there a strong liberal, progressive, even revolutionary bent to our generation. Unfortunately, it did not lead to the kind of change, the change in direction that we wanted, to a progressive direction. Somehow it got drowned out by an other majority that went in a regressive direction. But
I think that's
I don't
actually
know.
a good one from
Go
a
ahead.
generational point of view because it's like, and maybe I'm thinking for younger people than I shouldn't be, but it's like it's like you guys did all this sort of shit, and nothing happened. So why should I care? You know what I mean? You didn't do it. You didn't all this kind of stuff that you talked about in the '60s or whatever. You're going to bring about all this change, and what do we got?
Nothing.
I think that's a little bit too pessimistic because, what has endured is more like, an underground spirituality which started to come up more. And if there is hope for the future, that spirituality is going to have to be a big part of it. Whereas in the 60s, one of the problems was that we all talked a good game, but how many of us had actually done the work? And transformed ourselves. Not many. So anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that was true, but I'm saying I could
Yeah.
see how that could be like a way that our generation is viewed.
I think another part of the generational things, I remember my young niece saying this to me one time. I think she was still in high school. And she said, well, it's you baby boomers who have polluted all the rivers and cut down all the forests.
Sorry?
And it's boomers who've polluted all the rivers and cut down all the forests. And it really took me aback. First, because that she was actually in that realm at the age that she was, and that I felt the responsibility of that. And I will kind of lean to Bill's what he is saying about the growth of spirituality. And I think that it's possibly true that there is more pollution, the forests have been cut down, but it's related to in somewhat, Ian's topic of finances and money, that that it actually wasn't really the people, but it was, big business and finances in the world economics that has actually done that bidding, to this beautiful planet. And in, as a reaction, I think that actually has opened up opportunities for more spirituality, for more truth, for honesty, and those kinds of things, and for people becoming a little bit more conscious of their actions and what they're doing. And so, we did maybe not, fight the evil institutions in our generation, and I do believe we did. What I think has also happened in along with that is that the bigger institutions or corporations of the world have gotten bigger. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we actually lost, because I think we're gaining as an individual person, and through our own growth. Someone's mentioned that now we all have therapists, so that's really opened up so many things about who we want to be in the world. And so to me, that's, this whole discussion actually wraps around this whole idea of who do I want to be in this world? And am I going to let all of those kinds of influences actually affect me in the way that they may have before? So now I have a new opportunity to do things differently and be different.
Joe, Jeff, and I were talking about, in terms of what you're talking about, Ken, about the baby boomers, that the movement failed. There's one person right here who took hold of the situation and flew by it, and that's Pat Albright. Can we hear from you, Pat? Please.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks, Lorraine. And actually, I'm a little distracted here because we have a gas leak, which is so they just so anyway. But now he's found where it's leaking. He's go down and fix it. That's why I'm a little on and off. But yeah, well, well, I was brought up by parents. My mother, who it was afraid to tell. I have a twin sister. Tell my sister and I that she had been divorced, and she was so ashamed to say this that we didn't find out. We were like we turned 18, and then she said that she had been married previously. She's gotten divorced, and she always was very clear that it was important for women to have their own money. And she really emphasized going to school, and like if I got an A-, she was like, "Oh my God, you got an A-." So it was like a lot of pressure. But yet I felt like that I saw people like my father, who had a job he really didn't like, but he was an electrical engineer. He supported the family, and then he retired and he died. I thought, what kind of life is that? Because he spent most of his time doing something that he didn't really like. So I got to feel like that I wanted a life where we could all pursue our dreams. And so and I was at that point, I was interested in how in the first Earth Day, my sister and I helped organize the first Earth Day at our high school, got involved in anti-war work. I ended up dropping out of college my first year because I did an independent study with the Movement for a New Society. And I decided that I wanted to get at the root of what was happening in the world in terms of racism, sexism, the anti-war movement, and just the ecological the need to save the earth and so on. So anyway, so it's something that so anyway, I was saying in this small group we had that I was very influenced by the welfare rights movement, and the fact that which was a movement for money in women's hands for the work we're already doing. Not that you shouldn't have a job outside the home if you want, and so on and so forth, but the work we're already doing needs to be valued and supported. And what's more important than raising children and caring for people? And so that had a big influence on me. And one memory I have is that I work with an international grassroots network, and in 1977 we went to the Houston's Women's Conference, and where they were talking about welfare reform, where they were going to put in more work requirements, and most of the people there were already had agreed with that. But we worked with the welfare rights movement people who were there, to get that checked out, and again get a resolution that said that mothers receiving welfare should have the dignity of that money called a wage, not welfare. And we were able to pass that because even white women from the South who were conservative in many ways, they stood up and supported us when we had our aprons that said every mother is a working mother. And so it's kind of like, to me, it was that kind of, I started to feel like, oh, that this was something that we need to have a broader look at what society is about. I remember going with one of the welfare rights leaders to a workshop that was led by an academic who was talking about what workfare would be about. And I said, what is she talking about? And the welfare rights leader, she stood up and she said, they're taking our money. That's all you really needed to know. They're taking our money. And so that's the kind of education I decided I really wanted. Not that I have anything against academics and reading. I had a lot of things I didn't read or study because I dropped out of college my first year. But I chose to continue getting an education through the movement. So that's been going on ever since. But it's been things that we're looking up in some ways. I mean, it's a very difficult time, but we've made some headway recently into shifting some of the more traditional feminist types who have been sometimes slow to recognize mothering and caregiving as work are starting to broaden their perspective of what work is, and we're coming together more for like a care income now for people and planet is some kind of the purpose of society should be caring. And anyway, so that's where I'm coming from, and wanting to have a more satisfying life and to really hear the story of people whose situations are very different from mine, and that which and it helps me to get a better grip on my own situation when to hear what other people's perspectives are. So I don't know if that answers the question, but anyway, that's the kind of where I'm coming from. And
I'm happy to hear your voice because I was wondering why you weren't talking, but now you told me about
Right.
the gas leak. Now I know.
right.
We have about 10 minutes to go, and I want to actually assign two people to do, and this is a relatively enlightened group, but everybody isn't. So I'm going to assign two people that I think would be good for this little role play, a millennial and a baby boomer. And my nominees, you can accept it or not, are Lorraine and Joe Jeff. And I want you all to have like a just seeing you always cracks me up, Joe. I don't know why. Okay, so I want you all to have like a conversation and to sort of get into role, right? And the thing that you're going to talk about is, we actually talked about it. Um, you're going to be a baby boomer, and Lorraine, and you're going to play out a role where I don't understand why y'all don't are not more responsible and like get full-time jobs and don't do all this kind of like gig economy sort of stuff like that. Can you do that, Lorraine?
I think so. I
Yeah,
think so.
and you can put your own color in it. And Joe Jeff, your thing is like, look, all the stuff that y'all are talking about, this like, 9 to 5, 40-hour stuff, that doesn't make any sense to me at all, you know? So just have like a 5-minute conversation about that, and we're gonna listen and see maybe who did a good job or what somebody could say, and maybe how it might look like if we have this opportunity to do something like that with somebody from a different generation than us. You're on.
Well, listen, bro, you
Go,
got to get a job. Okay. Um, you got to be responsible. You got to start making your own money. Um, it teaches you so much. It really does. And I think the reason why you're not working is because you have poor self-esteem. That's the problem. Okay, your turn.
Well, my overarching reason for not getting the job that you want me to get is because you guys devalue the American dollar to the point where trading my time for labor gets me nowhere but behind. And I'm always catching up. And I can't you build these institutions and now they all go away. All the politicians we wanted to trust sent our jobs away. So now I have to get a job with 2 million other people and we all have the same outdated skills. What do you want me to do, bro?
Okay, listen, that's the way it is. That is the way it is. It was that way for my generation, and it's going to be the way for the next generation. You got to get out there and you just got to um, you got to pull and you got to strive and you'll get it. I mean, what generation after generation, that's what we have. That's what we had to do. Your situation is no worse than mine or the one before me.
I I agree with you in parts, but where I disagree is that if this has happened generation after generation, going back to get a job and a pension, doing the same thing, I don't see how that's going to net us any different than continuing the cycle. We face a new level of technology, which for better or for worse can help or hinder us. It can hinder us by taking jobs, but help by giving me a side job that I can do with a bike and a car versus, and I can make my own hours to spend with time with my family, my boomer family. I want to spend time with y'all. I don't want to be on the clock for somebody for pennies on the dollar when I could maneuver in a more flexible way that's not traditional.
Okay, time out, time out.
He's got a good point. He wins. He
Yep.
wins.
Are we doing this too good? I feel like I'm
Hold
not
on.
acting good
You
enough.
guys are great. Let's applaud our role play person people. And now you can come out of your role just be ourselves and like let's talk about that just for a minute. So in that conversation, what were some of the values that maybe might be different, let's say, between the two mythical people that we were talking about?
He's talking about really living life and really looking at life and saying, this is what I want. And I'm just talking about this is the way it is, and this is what you got to do. And he's just looking at it and saying no.
Isn't this a simple value opposition between, the older people who become conservative? They've tried things, they haven't done so well with them. So they say, hey, you just got to go along with the way things are and the way they've always been. And then the young people who are more idealistic and they want to start out trying things new, they say, hey, you didn't do a good job. We can do better. And then we see what happens, right?
So in this conversation, what might either party do better to understand where they're coming from? I know this is just a little small role play, but
Well, they were pretty much just arguing their positions and not getting at the underlying values, or not asking questions like what are the reasons you hold these positions, what are the underlying values, how does it relate to your own life, bringing out the sort of foundational thoughts, concepts that drove them to the positions that they're just articulating on a more superficial level, in a sense.
yeah, in a way, now she had like 3 minutes to do this, right? So be fair. So she didn't really ask, like, what's really going on with you, Joe? You know what I mean? Why are you feeling so insecure? You know, I mean, that's just one.
Towards the end, when he said, I just don't want to do everything that you guys are doing, and what's the point? And I want to, that he made sense.
You
I
heard that.
just have to say, unfortunately, it's like, yeah, you're right. I see your point.
Well, also, I would have been interested if the boomer representative had said to the what are these younger people called? Millennials? I don't know exactly
Keep
what that
changing
is.
the Z's and the Y's. I can't keep it straight myself.
Right. These these young millennial whatevers had said, how can I support you to find a vision and a path that works for you? What do you think you would like to do, and then what expresses who you are? Your special individual nature in this kooky world. Things along that would have been nice. Of course, our parents didn't do that for us. So our boomer parents never did that for us. So we didn't have the role modeling to help our children and young people in that way. But anyway, that was my thought.
So, thinking about it, when you asked like what could we do to better understand each other from the millennial perspective towards you all, I think kind of laying out, you know, um, I think when you guys look at what we do, you don't see like consistency in it or longevity. Um, and I think it's because these things aren't structured the same. Like the ways we make money, we don't have to go into a building a certain amount of times a week, or so it's not structured the same. So you may not see consistency. Um, but also I lost it. I lost it. Yeah, seeing consistency in what we're doing, and I guess we could be better at like communicating why we feel purpose in what we're doing versus not just wanting to be a cog in the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, Ken raised his hand.
But just briefly, yeah, that also goes to a stereotype about our generation. I mean, I feel the same way that you were articulating, Joe Jeff. I didn't want to go into a fucking building and do a 9 to 5 job. I always wanted to find my own escape route. So a lot of our people from our generation were in that same position. We were the rebels against, and we were the counterculture and the generation gap generation against those that came before us.
Yeah,
I think that's what
yeah.
that's what I saw. And Joe, what he was saying is that, you think I'm going to go and trade my valuable time doing that for that amount of money? And I love that because that's exactly what needs for me as I see it, is that's that kind of inspiration that is coming forth in the younger people that are saying, hey, just a minute here. You know what? There are alternatives, and this is how I can live my life. Like as you're describing, doing jobs online, or like you're not going to a specific building, so it does look very different. Because you got choices and use them, is what I say. If that's your inclination to go in that direction, do that. Because it doesn't need to be as it always was. And like going to a certain building and putting in your time. And like Pat was saying, after her father, blood, sweat, and tears put into this job his whole entire life, and then he dies, which is not uncommon for our generation. So I'd love to hear this in his voice, and I'd love to hear that passion. And I say just go get him, because
Yeah, I thought Joe, he had 3 minutes. He did a really good job because now this is like a made up story, right? But it's possible that we really wouldn't have empathy for the situation that him and his generation is living for unless he explained it to us. He broke it down.
He did break it down.
So I did want to during our back and forth when she said, she thinks where our generation can be insecure, and that's not why we're going to do certain things. I think like the inverse could also be true, where like our generation looks at you guys and said like you kind of gave up, like the world of possibilities, and like you chose to work at one place for 20 or 30 years, and now we understand we have bills and kids, but it's like we've kind of seen that happen after, and that's what the people before y'all did, and we're like, is somebody going to take a chance and like kind of break the mold or do something a little bit, or are we just going to follow suit? So I think that's where some of us are in terms of like when we get to that fork in the road of Do I stay on the path or do I try to break the mold?
Yeah. You
Yeah.
people who break the path, you're the ones who really have the true self-esteem because you have the ability, you have faith in yourself to do that. And we just took the same old path, pay bills and stuff. So
And I'm hoping that all of us that are older can continue to support you all to doing what you're doing, because God knows what we've done. We did some stuff, but a lot of it hasn't worked at all. So anyway, it's about time, and I'm just wondering. I don't even know if this is realistic, but is there anything that you can carry forward from this 1.5 hour that might be useful for you? If so,
Just
please articulate it.
just briefly, I hadn't been thinking about this issue, and I like the way you framed it at the beginning, Angelo, and even in our prior discussion about how we need to open every avenue of communication. We're down to our backs against the wall, down to the wire here for maybe or maybe not saving civilization, at least in the country in which you and I reside. So I hadn't thought of it intergenerationally. I hadn't addressed this issue even in my thinking. I was thinking on other dimensions. So it's been very helpful to me just to open my mind along this path.
No, thanks.
So I would say empathy and collaboration. Like we said, if we take the time to like understand why we made certain decisions, and we can understand from both sides, like you said, when it comes to moving forward, I think you guys could equip us with more information and vice versa, so that our efforts have a little more juice going forward, um, with the wisdom of the past behind it.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, we have a responsibility to help y'all. Um, maybe that's with the wisdom of my 75 years old, not going to be here forever, point of view. So anyway, maybe just one word or one sentence to sort of close us out. I'm really grateful for y'all my gratitude that y'all showed up for this. Ian and I were wondering whether we're even going to do this. At least I was. So my word is gratitude.
I'll be open-mindedness.
I'm looking.
Ian, you kind of said it better than I. I was going to say openly receptive.
Mm.
There you go.
Openness. Yeah.
Ecuador, here I come.
Let's go.
Well, this is too many words, but I did want to say, but come back to how we started with the song, and the song keeps coming to mind for me as the change is going to come, Sam Cooke. And I think when you two people say nothing's ever going to change, well, that's not true. The change is going to come. So I just want to end with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, it's here. It ain't
It's
coming.
here. In fact.
So my
The
song
highlight
would
for
have
me
been.
was go ahead,
Go
Bill.
ahead, Ken.
The highlight for me was just being with you all, reconnecting with Tamar, seeing Bill in our group because he's had some health problems, and being with you all. That's the best part of this whole thing.
Indeed. My song was gonna be "We Gonna Make It" by the Locks, and I believe that together we gonna make it.
Yeah, we gonna make it.
All right. Any last words? I guess not.
Lovely to see you guys again. Lovely to see you all.
Peace.
Peace.